Greetings, traveler. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that's been on my mind for a while now, and that is the mining mechanic in Elite Dangerous, the space game. Specifically, how it feels to me when I play it, when I've played it in the past, and why it feels so different from other mining mechanics that I've enjoyed from other games, specifically such as Red Dead Redemption 2 and to a lesser extent Final Fantasy XI. Now, if you haven't played these games, don't worry because I'll do my best to explain the context around these games to highlight the main point about the mechanics rather than the games themselves. If you don't know who I am, my name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 14 years now. I've worked at companies like Electronic Arts, Cygames, Tri-Ace. I've worked on titles like FIFA, Star Ocean, Idolmaster, and quite a few more. And the mining mechanics in various games have always been a topic that fascinated me. Most games focus on combat, but the moment you start caring about combat and having good weapons and good equipment and all that, then the procurement of those weapons and equipment becomes important. And that's usually where mining comes in, as well as making money for the game. Now, as I was playing Elite Dangerous in the past, and I don't know what's the latest state and if this radically changed in the past few days, but as far as I experienced, Elite Dangerous always left me a bit wanting in the mining mechanic. And that's not to say that they're doing it right or wrong, or the other games that I'll mention do it right or wrong. I'm purely talking about my personal experience here. So I felt that the way that Elite Dangerous handles mining, which is basically you take your spaceship, you make sure you have the right mining equipment and enough space in your ship to carry all the metals back and so on. You fly to the asteroid in a pretty uneventful journey if you plan it well, and you get there, you pick an asteroid, you use a single weapon or a single tool to break a chunk off, and then you send the bots that you have to collect the metals that are in the asteroid, and then basically you repeat that until your ship is full, and then you just fly back and sell it or give it to NPCs or whatever it is you want to do. Now, on principle, there's nothing wrong with that. It sounds extremely logical and extremely straightforward. But I always felt that even though I enjoyed specifically the mining mechanic and just pure resource collection mechanics in other games, specifically in Red Dead Redemption 2 and Final Fantasy XI, I felt that the experience in Elite Dangerous always felt a bit empty for me. I thought that there's no excitement for it. There's no interesting aspect. There's nothing to look forward to. I'm just going through the motions, and I know that within X minutes, unless I do something catastrophically wrong, I should end up with the mining materials. So what I want to do today is, now that I've briefly explained the process in Elite Dangerous, I want to jump in to Red Dead Redemption and show how that mechanic works in that game. And again, this is not to say that one is better than the other. It's just my personal observation and how I think about it. So let me adjust my camera so I give you guys more visible space. Okay, there we go. That should be better. So if you haven't played Red Dead Redemption, the idea is that you are, to put it simply, let's say a cowboy or an outlaw in the Wild Wild West, and you're basically just trying to survive with your band of outlaws, let's say. So in this game, it's all about the gun shooting and trying to make money and trying to evade the law and all that stuff. So in the meantime, what you do is, since you're in the Wild Wild West, like you see here, you get to enjoy all these beautiful sceneries, and you get to do some hunting. Now, you might be able to see in the distance that around this river, there is several living creatures. So right in front of us, there's some deer, There they go, jumping around. On the water, on the distance over there, maybe you can't see it because they're tiny. Let me see if I can get the game to target them. Yeah. So you see that, well, even though it's tiny, at that red dot over there, there's apparently a Peking duck. And that's a deer. And there's all sorts of birds flying around that I could hunt and so on. So the game gives you the opportunity to hunt all these creatures like a real, I suppose, adventurer or survivor in the Wild West. And you harvest their meat and their skins and their antlers and so on, and you also use it for equipment. So in the broad sense, similar to how you mine for metals to then use on your spaceship in Elite Dangerous. And this humble deer here is something that made me think that the experience I got with the hunting, which is the equivalent of the mining mechanic here, was quite a bit more enjoyable for me than Elite Dangerous. So let's go over why exactly that was. So let's say that I want to hunt some deer today because I need their skins to craft some clothes or some pouches and so on. What would the process be in that? Again, I take my horse. I would probably take a look at the map of the game, and if I know I want to hunt deer, then perhaps this area with the deer here is a good place to start, although they tend to wander around a bit. So again, I would get to the target location and then I would start looking for deer. Except already there is a huge difference in the two games. So in Elite Dangerous, as I mentioned, I would just fly to my destination, and if I do everything right, nobody should bother me on the journey. In Red Dead Redemption, there's plenty of things that can happen that might interfere with my trip down here to the river to do my hunting, or that I want to do as side activities. So for example, even in this small short trip down this very short path to the river, I might see other animals that I wasn't planning on hunting, but now I want to hunt. Or there might be an NPC here asking for help, or I might encounter some outlaws other outlaws that want to capture me and get the bounty on me or something. So all these things can happen that sort of make the journey itself interesting getting here. So of course this is a very short trip. It's maybe 1 minute to get from here to here where I am now. But if I wanted to hunt bears, for example, I would have to go from here all the way to up there, and there's so many things that can happen in the meantime. So this is one of the 3 points that I want to mention that I experienced differently in this game versus Elite Dangerous. So first of all, the events and the opportunities that might happen on the way to the destination. Now I know that in Elite Dangerous there is the NPC pirates that show up, but again, if you do everything correctly, they appear, they scan your ship, they see you don't have anything, and they just fly away. So unless you're extremely unlucky and there's some players there to hunt you, there should be basically no events happening on your way to your destination. Now, once you get to your destination and you find the deer, like the ones over there, you have several interesting things that you can do with these deer. Now, if you see, or maybe I can use these ducks as an example, whenever you see an animal, if you see on the bottom right over there, it says Peking duck and there's three stars next to its name. So 3 stars means that it's the best quality, it can yield the best quality materials. If it was 2 stars or 1 star, the materials would just not be as good. So that is another point where I think this is interesting. So when you get to the destination, you have to do some scanning yourself to see if this is what you want or not. And here you might say, well, in Elite Dangerous you have the same thing, right? Not all asteroids have the same quality or the same quantity of materials. And you would be correct. But the way this happens in that game is you do a wide scan of the area, and immediately on your map you know which asteroids have the best yield, essentially. So for the most part, there is much less manual scanning. There is much less decision of the on the side of the player, and you only focus on the highest yield locations. While here, even if you find a, let's say, lower quality animal, or like something that's not going to yield as many materials, there is still value in it, because while you're doing your hunting, you will also get meat from the animal, which you can use to feed your character, since the game has a hunger, I suppose, and health mechanic. You might get fat from the animal, which is used for crafting entirely other things that are not related to the leathercraft thing that we set out to support with our skin hunting. And that's, I think, the next part, the second point, where things become more interesting here. So you get materials that are not directly related to the thing you set out to get. So if I hunt that deer over there, for example, for its skin, I will automatically get some fat and some meat from it. And of course I could throw it away, but why would I throw those away, since those are also useful for crafting or making food for the character, or even contributing it back to the camp, right, for the others to eat. Or if I don't want to do any of that, I could just sell it for money, which is, again, a good prospect. I'm not getting just one type of material from there. I'm not getting just the skin. There's other things that come into my experience that make me think, what do I want to do with this? Do I want to eat the meat? Do I want to sell the meat? Do I want to cook it and use it later? Do I want to contribute it to the camp? There's many more interesting choices to do here, and all these choices are meaningful. So the money I would get from selling it would be decent for the amount of time I spent hunting. Contributing it to the camp, again, has value for reasons that I'm not going to get into now, but there is some pretty good value there. Eating it for the character, of course, makes sense, especially if you're not going back to the camp and you're camping out in the wild where you don't have any access to food. Then you would eat the meat from the animals you hunt. So you get all these things that are adding extra dimensions to you looking for a single material. Now, of course, you can still ignore all that and go for the material you're going after. But they make the journey and the experience much more interesting decision-wise than simply flying somewhere and picking up one material and flying back. And the last thing I want to highlight here is specifically for the deer, right? And of course, this doesn't just happen with the deer; it happens with many animals in the game. But for this deer, which is perfect quality, I have several choices. I could just kill it with my pistol or with a rifle, and I would still get its skin and some meat and so on. But the game has this mechanic where if you kill animals a certain way, you get to preserve their hide at the highest quality, yielding a perfect pelt, which can be used for some crafts that specifically require perfect pelts. Or you could simply get more materials. So if you kill one of these ducks with the preferred way, then it would yield more feathers, more meat, I think, and so on. So there's always value to going through the extra effort. And to give you a specific example of what this mechanic is like in this game, so this deer, for example, if I see its information, then it says use a rifle for a clean kill. And a clean kill is a kill that preserves the quality of the animal, so the 2 stars in this case, or if it was 3 stars, it would remain 3 stars. If I don't kill it with the preferred way, then the star rating would get downgraded 1 or 2 levels. So if I kill this deer with a pistol, the quality will drop down to 1 star. But that still might be useful depending on what I'm doing. So these options here add way more depth to what I can do and what I can expect. And you might think, well, yeah, but is this really such a big deal? Why are these choices meaningful, and how do they make a difference? Well, for deer, it says, what was it? You have to use a rifle for a clean kill. So you can use I think this rifle maybe, or just some other kind of rifle to kill it. But we also know from from one of the early missions in the game that you can also use this bow to kill the deer and still maintain full quality for the pelts and the materials. Now, what's so different about this? Well, if you use the bow, that's a completely different approach than using the rifle, right? So the advantage of the bow is that, yeah, it doesn't have so much range, and it has an arched shot versus a straight shot that the bullet would produce, but it doesn't make noise. So whether you hit or miss with your bow, it doesn't create noise, and it doesn't scare the other animals as much. Doing it with a rifle, well, you can still get the same result, but you will definitely make a lot of noise. So if you wanted to continue hunting after that original kill, then you have to go further to find more animals. And here's the interesting part, right? The options don't stop there, because actually the game also offers this thing, which is a lasso. So you can throw your lasso like this, and you can capture an animal, and oh, there goes a squirrel down there, or a rabbit. You can throw your lasso, and you can capture the deer and kill it from close distance with your knife. So instead of doing the arrow to the head type of kill that basically has the logic that since you did a one-shot kill to the head, it preserves the hide on the body of the animal. If you use a lasso and then kill the animal with your knife, then you make a clean cut straight to the heart of the animal, so it dies quickly, it doesn't spoil the fur and the hide, and it's an alternative. And here I get what you're thinking. You're thinking, is really using the lasso that different from using the rifle or the bow? What difference does it make whether you use a lasso or the bow, for example? So if I want to hunt that deer with the bow, then I would do something like this, and I would bring out my bow, wait for the deer to stop, and take my shot. But you already see that it's quite... The deer is moving randomly, and it might not stop in a good enough spot for me to have a clean shot. Also, the sun is going down, so it's going to become more and more difficult to see what I'm targeting. So I have to get closer, but of course if I get too close, the deer gets spooked and it runs away. Now watch what happens, and I don't know if I'm going to be successful in this. Watch the alternative gameplay with a lasso. So I can run to the deer quickly, and before the deer gets to run, I can do the close-up kill, and I don't have to worry about my aiming on a long distance. Now I didn't of course go through the trouble of checking if this is a good deer or not, a high quality deer, but basically that's the mechanic. And aiming from up close like I did now with the lasso is generally speaking way easier than trying to aim far away with a rifle or with a bow, especially in dark conditions like we got just now. And basically that's the third point I wanted to make. So all these different methods of obtaining essentially the same resource make me think carefully about what my options are and how I want to approach the situation. Also, another thing is that the lasso doesn't have ammunition. You always have the lasso with you, while the bow and the rifle and so on have ammunition. And if you run out, you either have to buy more ammunition or craft more, and that might not always be possible. Also, when you carry the animal back home, you get to choose whether you want to carry the whole carcass, like I have here at the back of my horse, or you want to skin the animal on the spot and use only part of the ingredients. And that there's, advantages and disadvantages to both approaches. So that's basically the third point. The method you use to extract the resources itself is a meaningful choice, and it doesn't matter which choice you go with, whether you go with a quick kill with your revolver or a proper kill with your bow or rifle, or you go with the close-up lasso kill like I did, which requires a different skill set. It requires probably better riding and better spatial awareness than just aiming with the bow. There's still advantages and disadvantages to all of these methods, and they're all interesting. There's no method that you would basically never use, because they all make sense in different scenarios. Well, my personal experience with Elite Dangerous is that you just pick the right mining gear, you go there and you mine, and there's nothing to change your action plan. There's no unforeseen circumstances. There's no opportunities for a better yield. So you just mine to the fullness of your cargo ship. You ignore the materials that are not the highest quality material that you're looking for, and basically that's where the experience ends. So that's what I wanted to cover, comparing these two games. Again, not saying that one is better than the other, purely talking about my personal experience, because I know that a lot of people would play the mining mechanic in Elite Dangerous simply to relax and not have a super exciting gaming time. So the last thing I want to mention is the experience in Final Fantasy XI. So, of course, this is a game from a while ago, so I don't know how many people have played it or even know about it. But basically, the mining mechanic there had similarities to Red Dead Redemption, or I should say Red Dead Redemption 2 has similarities to Final Fantasy XI, because there, if you wanted to do mining, you would go to a mine, and the mines essentially would be a collection of tunnels. That collection of tunnels would be kind of like a dungeon, essentially. So you would have the mining points that were like the veins of ore, so to speak. And when you would mine on a vein of ore, your pickaxe might break or not. So how many pickaxes you were carrying was another thing that the game kept track of. When you mined, you had a limited number of attempts to mine ore from that specific spot. And once the spot was depleted, you couldn't do anything with it anymore. Now here's the key part that's different from Elite Dangerous. You didn't really know what you would get when you would be mining. You might get gold, you might get platinum ore, you might get coal or stones or something. There was a range of different possibilities of what you could get based on your skill level and the location of the mining point and a bunch of other stuff. Now, something that was different from Red Dead Redemption 2 that I think made the experience way more interesting is not only you could get materials that were unrelated to the main thing you were going for. So let's say you were mining for gold, you might still get the platinum, the stones, maybe perhaps quest items or tokens that you would use in other events in the game, adding to the complexity and to the interesting choices you would get from doing this mining beyond your basic goal, which would be gold, let's say. But there would be monsters in those tunnels in the mines. So to get to the point you wanted to go to mine, you would also have to go through a number of monsters that were on the way. And since we're talking about tunnels, it would be very difficult to go around these monsters without fighting them or getting aggroed by them or somehow being involved with them. So essentially you had two choices there. You would either have to somehow make sure you were not detected by these monsters, because quite often they would be dangerous and aggressive to the player, or you would have to essentially fight your way there. But the more interesting outcome of that is that while you were mining, you could also select some of these monsters to hunt for their resources. So while you were out on your mining run, you could also kill a number of monsters that were also interesting for you for some quests or for their materials, or perhaps even to level up. So The game presenting all these choices only made my experience more interesting. It was still up to me whether I wanted to hunt those extra monsters or sneak by them or use magic to make my presence undetectable, so I don't have to worry about the monsters, although that had its own mechanic where the magic to make myself undetectable would have a time limit. So, and usually the time limit was random. So sometimes it would last 1 minute, sometimes it would last, I don't know, 3 minutes. So that added an extra element of excitement. And it made the people who would go after the mining aspect of the game gain some sort of prestige, because there was some inherent difficulty in mining. So it was interesting, and it was challenging, and it was multi-dimensional. And that I noticed that I personally enjoyed, and my personal thoughts, again, I'm not saying that the game should do this, just if I could have my way, I suppose, with it, what I would do is add some of these aspects to the experience to make it more interesting for me personally. So adding perhaps some other NPC spaceships or other entities around the mining areas or along the way to the mining areas that give me interesting choices of, do I want to talk to them? Do I want to sell something to them? Are they suddenly gonna start hunting me? Should I hunt them for a random bounty perhaps? That's something that keeps me on my toes without being extremely stressful, of course, and it gives me an interesting option along the way. The other part is when I'm doing the mining, just like here in Red Dead Redemption and in Final Fantasy XI that I experienced, there isn't just one thing that I'm going for and I'm ignoring absolutely everything else materials wise. So here perhaps I was going for just the skin of the deer, but I ended up with the whole carcass. So when I go back to camp or when I sit down to skin this animal, I will also get those materials, and since I have them, that will make me think, okay, now that I have these things, what other interesting things I can do with them? Should I sell them? Should I contribute them to the camp? Should I cook the meat? And so on. Anyway, these are my thoughts for today. I'm gonna leave you here for now as the rain is getting quite heavy in the game here. And I should probably camp for the night. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, especially around mining mechanics, because I think it's one of the more interesting aspects of open world video games like this. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have fun.